It's cold outside, there's no kind of atmosphere, I'm all alone. More or less, let me fly far away from here, far, 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 in the sun, sun, sun. I want to ride ship that can comatose, drinking fresh mango juice. I have no idea what this line is, I can never understand it. In the sun, sun, sun. Far, 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 in the sun, sun, sun. Red Dwarf.
Yay! Yay, Red Dwarf!
Welcome to the Off Hours Vlogs, where me and my roommates, John and Matt.
How you doing?
We talk about what we've been watching when I'm not actually producing scripted videos, or at least when I'm working on the scripted videos and just watching it for background filler. Yeah. And we started off this, when we finally got them moved in, and we started with, of course, the best science fiction comedy out there in deep space, 3 million years in the future. I forgot that library book.
Man,
Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf.
The fights on that book by now must be a real killer.
And amazing because it is now the 30th, actually it's past the 30th anniversary of the series premiering because its original air date of the first episode, The End, was the 15th February in 1988. The series is as old as I am. That is the entire joke. The series is as old as I am.
It's legally old enough to vote.
Mm-hmm. It can own a car. It can own a house.
It can rent a car.
It can drink.
Yeah. Basic premise of the series. The lowest ranked member on the Jupiter Mining Corps ship, the Red Dwarf, Dave Lister, is thrown into stasis for having a pet cat on the ship because the animal wasn't properly sent through quarantine and could cause all kinds of viruses and anomalies. Due to him doing that, he gets shoved in lockup and forfeits his pay, and wakes up 3 million years later to find out that his incompetent superior, as an immediate superior, he's the second lowest ranked member of the ship, Arnold J. Rimmer, has misrepaired a drive plate which caused a radiation leak that killed the rest of the crew, turned them to dust, and basically he's now the only human left alive.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most infamous jokes in the series is then Lister's shock about being the last man alive and like, what about this person? He's dead, Dave. Everybody's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Oh, and the most out there thing I've ever seen in a science fiction show ever. His cat was in the captain's quarters, was it?
His cat was safe from the radiation and basically, well, all deadly levels of it, and basically took in the radiation, mutated, gave birth to a litter of cats who all inbred over the millions of years and evolved into a humanoid cat species.
Yeah, basically just people, but with, like, sharp, pointy teeth.
And cat tendencies, which, when I first saw that, I went, what? What?
Yeah.
I've heard of Red Dwarf before we marathon this series, and going on the adventures of the crew, I was constantly, like, laughing and just...
Speak up.
I was just laughing constantly, and my mind was constantly being blown with, like, how crazy these situations they would find themselves in. I kind of akin their adventures to that of the team in Outpost Blood Gulch from Red vs. Blue.
It is kind of comparable, yeah.
Because, they will find a scenario just by finding things on the ship or just going to different planets, and, like the time they meet the Despair Squid, or, the various times where they, get into power struggles on the ship and,
travel through time.
Yeah.
It's basically zany, but it's all setting appropriate zany. Back to the recap. The only other two sentients on board aside from, Lister himself and the last remaining member of the cat species, who is, of course, named Cat, are a holographic projection of Arnold Rimmer and that's made possible because the ship's computer, a sentient AI named Holly, thinks that Rimmer would be the most appropriate person to keep Dave sane, because Lister is kind of a layabout bum, whereas Rimmer is this tightwad smeghead.
Yeah.
To use the show's terminology for it. And yeah, Rimmer is pretty much egotistical and power hungry, but you can't help feel for the guy for how it comes about, because he is really that stressed and kind of abused by his family into wanting to, make it better than them, to show that he actually is someone of worth and merit. The problem is all of his, what would be the best way to describe this? All of his baggage from that completely prevents him from actually performing to his actual capability, realizing his actual self.
Yeah.
In fact, they even call this out in one episode where everyone seems to get exactly what they wanted, and Rimmer's own mind can't let him have that.
Yeah, that is specifically from the episode, it's the episode where they go into this holographic virtual reality game, Better Than Life, and basically he has the chance to finally have, the recognition he always wanted from his father, and the cat screwed him over by making his father call him a total smeghead. And that basically just snapped him to reality, back into the concept of reality where nothing good ever happens to him. So of course, if, Better Than Life is supposed to be absolute all the best things happening to him, it then becomes all of the worst potential things happening to him.
Yeah. Rimmer can be a big smeghead at times, but I agree that you can't help but feel sorry for the guy,
No.
you know?
Yeah, even when he does absolutely abhorrent things, you realize this is coming from a guy who had a father that couldn't make it into the military, so he basically abused his kids to make them tall, to know military procedure. He made his life a living hell, and Rimmer hates him for it, but still wants to be that, because that's all he knows. That's what he was raised to be.
And it's kind of a spiteful screw you to his father as well, in actually achieving what he never could.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and, we got the cat, we got Holly, we got Rimmer, and we got Dave Lister. But in season 3?
3, yeah.
Yep, season 3, we meet the other character of the show, Crichton.
Crichton is a service android, basically modeled after C-3PO from Star Wars, and it's kind of transparent in that, except instead of, gold or bronze, he is pewter black. And the joke there is that he is a slave to his programming, which Lister tries to help him beyond, even though he becomes to rely on him for all the menial stuff that Lister is too lazy to actually do.
Which is pretty much everything.
It's kind of a contrast, though, in that Lister is the lazy bum, but he's actually a nice guy, whereas Rimmer is the stringent, rules-oriented person who will take any type of rule and abuse the hell out of it simply to, get... I don't want to say schadenfreude, but it's a layer of sadism from just, transferring all of the bile he has towards himself that he got unnecessarily from his father off to other people to make himself feel better.
Yeah.
And it kind of results in this spiteful cycle between Rimmer and Lister, whereas Lister, if Rimmer was less smeg-headed, the two would get along just fine. They did know each other at times, but it would never be personal like it feels on in early seasons. And part of the issue, but also merit to the show, is that the two never seem to really be able to bury the hatchet. Or at least not bury the hatchet in each other's backs.
Yeah. That actually, fun fact for those who don't know, Craig Charles and Chris Barry, who played Lister and Rimmer respectively, they actually did not like each other when they first got along. Even Craig Charles, who basically said, we just didn't get along. So whenever you see them really going at each other, that comes from an actual place. And that I give that credit to the actors. To be able to channel that in a very healthy way.
They eventually started getting along, yeah.
Of course, yeah. You got to at first.
Yeah.
You got to eventually if you're working with these people.
And whenever they had a moment where they just kind of made amends slightly or, like, had a real heart-to-heart moment, like, I think that's when the show was at its best. You know, like, these... You know,
where you bridge the divide between these two very different people. I think the, one of the most striking moments in that is the season 3 episode, Marooned. Yeah, that's the one, where it's just the two of them. Lister has the chance to die because the ship they're on, not the Red Dwarf, it's one of their scout ships, crashed on an ice moon, and basically Rimmer has to make it so he can last through it. And the two have this heartfelt talk about the things that keep them going. And for Rimmer, he has with them this really vintage expensive chest with these really expensive vintage toys which are the only things his father ever gave him. So he ascribes that so much value to that simply for what we discussed before, that he's the father who thinks that he's worthless, and yet he gave him that thing. Whereas with Lister, it's a cheap, dumb, crummy guitar, but it's an aspiration of his dream, and basically they have to burn one or the other, and that means so much to Rimmer that his father made the gesture versus Lister, who, let's just face it, he can get another guitar, but the fact is that it's his guitar. It's lasted through him all this time that he can't actually part for it. So in probably the most, I'll go out and say it, straight up villainous thing Lister ever does in the show, he goes behind Rimmer's back, backstabs him, and burns all of his things, and making Rimmer think that, actually the Rimmer's response to it is the most impactful part of that, in that he's a smeg-head, but this was the moment where he could have finally put that all away and possibly begun to move them into a better relationship between them, where they had that mutual respect despite their contrasts with each other, had Lister not burned those things, because it would have then given Rimmer someone he could truly trust and count as a friend, instead of someone just on the long list of backstabbers.
Actually, I think, the thing of how he backstabbed him originally was he traced the outline of his guitar through Rimmer's vintage chest and burned it to make it look like he burned his guitar. And Rimmer's so moved, you would sacrifice something that meant that much to you? Burn my soldiers. Burn them too. We are doing this together. And then when he finds out, he's just get the guitar. We're burning that too.
Yeah, because having someone he could have total faith in was more personal and valuable to him than the bastard father who never gave him really anything. So if Lister would have actually burned his guitar for him, then the toy soldiers would have been worthless to him by comparison.
Mm-hmm. And then that pretty much says, this is not going to be salvaged anytime soon. And probably ever, but...
And to see how, just as a contrast of how long that's been, where you never really see the relationship recover from that episode aired in 1989.
Did that?
1989.
Whoa. And it's been nearly 30 years, and they're still no closer to being true friends.
Mainly, they start calling each other by the cutesy best friend named Listy and Rimsey of, season 6, I want to say?
6 or 7, around that time.
Yeah, so they at least have some... They're getting better-ish.
Yeah.
But they're not, best friends that smile, that say, hey, buddy, how's it going?
Yeah. You can also kind of split the series into, weird fiefdoms of storytelling engine, with seasons 1 and 2 mainly focused around Rimmer versus Lister, in that their two contrasting personalities creates all the conflict and the storytelling of the series. Season 3 has them start to, adventure to other places and play into more of the sci-fi tropes that they would find themselves in coincidentally in the first 2 seasons, with Marooned being the turning point to the Lister versus Rimmer story engine, and then past that, they're all playing with parodies or concepts of sci-fi tropes, primarily revolving around 3 points. The polymorphs, which are a genetic organism that can shapeshift into whatever someone is thinking of, and then the polymorphs eat the emotions of those that they come across, so basically they're pseudo-parasites. The second are the simulants, which are basically robots, biomechanical robots that have just basically gone crazy because they were created for a war that never came, so they just decided to actually do something, kill all humans. Mm-hmm. And the third are Gelfs, which are basically the waste bin of all genetic modification. Basically the mutants from Power Rangers Time Force. Mm-hmm. And most of the common encounters of the series with alien creatures comes from those, because while we do see other strange life forms out there, usually it's coincidental, and they never actually encounter any type of alien life form that did not originate from humanity itself in some way. Well, yeah. Okay, they do encounter in season, 11, I think it's either 11 or 12, a device that allows them to speak with the universe itself, but the device that allows them to speak with the universe itself was still created by humans.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm thoroughly happy that I went through the series with you guys, and, as the first big sci-fi show that I watched since, moving out here, I gotta say, Red Dwarf has, peaks and valleys of greatness. What is it, people usually agree the first 5 seasons are pretty solid, or is it the first 6?
First 6.
First 6. 6 is usually considered the best season, as it has the most high-rated episodes, and it used the story arc well, but after episode 36 of the series overall is when it kind of hit its decline. Mid-season 3 through season 6 are all of the episodes. Mid-season 3 through season 5 are where they have all the random, encounter the odd thing of the week from, science fiction stuff. Season 6, 7, and 8 include the story arc, 6 and 7 primarily. 6 and 7 include the story arc of they've lost the Red Dwarf, now they need to find it again. Season 8 is they're back on Red Dwarf, but the rest of the crew is alive again. Season 9 is just a 3-episode mini-series that brings the series, reintroduces it to a new generation, because Season 8 aired in 1999, and Season 9, aka Back to Earth, didn't air until 2009, when the franchise was bought up by the British network Dave, and basically it received new life again in syndication.
Yep. And I gotta say, I agree with everybody, the season 8 stuff with the crew being back to life, that's definitely the most hard to sit through.
Yeah. It doesn't help that that's also the longest season at 8 episodes with a 3-part opening.
3-part opening and then a 2-parter in it, so it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories, and 2 of which are just way too freaking long.
Right, yeah. And also, and a lot of the content in those episodes are very cringy, Cruddy TV, where the crew, some scrupulous members of the Red Dwarf reprogrammed Crichton to videotape girls in the bathroom.
Because Crichton has been defined by the returning Red Dwarf crew as a woman, because he does not have a penis.
For which in and of itself is a case of what were they on, but back to the point, the whole episode is creepy because they play off them peeping on other people as comedy, and it's just a lot of no, just
season 7 people will say is the beginning of the decline with it, because Chris Berry, who plays Rimmer, decided that doing all the science fiction stuff wasn't for him, and he just wanted to be on his own sort of sitcom stuff. And at the time, between the hiatus between season 7 and season 6, because there was a 4-year gap in that, because David Lister's actor, Craig Charles, was the unfortunate victim of the legal system, but was later exonerated for it. Well, basically during that time, he had his own show, found that worked a lot, and won himself right out of the show. He was. But he found that the much lighter workload actually worked better for them, and reminiscing on good memories about the series, decided he wanted to come back. Yeah. So, despite them getting rid of him in season 7 and replacing him with another character, Christine Kochanski, who is Lister's long-lost major love interest from, ironically, this version of Christine is from another universe, comes on to join them. So you have a new potential dynamic in that where there was Rimmer versus Lister in the early series, it is now Crichton versus Kochanski on who loves Lister more. And it didn't work because I don't think they shifted the paradigm enough. Yeah. I think the Crichton stuff was just too repetitious and insulting because, like, what does he care that there's another woman on board?
Right, like like a lot of the character motivations in those seasons seem to come out of nowhere. Like, you know, when
it seems more like it's to justify this one punchline instead of the situation they're in creating the punchline.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't help that whenever he gets like very emotional, he just goes into this really high-pitched voice. Sorry,
John.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right to do it, and basically that is my response to that voice in its entirety. It's very grating.
It's very annoying.
It's grating. It's unneeded, and it's why a lot of people. It's like as Matt Williams, aka Welshie, first put it. You started to wish that they would just turn him off and leave him off.
And like Series 7...
Which is ironically what he was actually afraid of. So it makes you question, like, why are you acting in such a way which will cause what you're afraid of in the first place?
Like, the worst offense of this comes from, what was the name of the episode where...
Duck Soup.
Duck Soup, yeah. In Duck Soup, essentially Crichton's so jealous of Kochanski that he, there's like a ship malfunction, so... They
have to crawl through the ductwork of the ship to get to main engineering, but it's revealed at the end of the episode that they didn't need to crawl through the ship in the first place because Crichton created overrides for all of the doors.
Which basically is like Crichton's most villainous thing that he ever does, because what the hell, man? We could have died down there.
It basically made the entire episode pointless.
Right. So, like, and what makes it even worse is that when they're the ducks, they have, like, real heart-to-heart moments, and they're talking, it's very dramatic and sappy. And then the ending happens, and nope. That's all goes away.
It's like, what was the point of it even? And it's
spiteful, too, because Lister is claustrophobic. So, he puts it, basically when you have that kind of phobia, it puts your body in a full-on stress position. You can't turn off your fear. You're just consumed by it. You can barely function. It is like one of the worst possible things you could do for someone to have them subsumed by their constant fear. And we're supposed to like Crichton after this, after he did this to someone that he says he really cares about and is doing this for.
Yeah. That's just straight up abuse. And we didn't like it.
Yeah. Although,
that's not even the worst episode of the show.
The worst episode is Pete.
This is during the era where the rest of the crew is back, and all the main cast have been locked up in, the criminals district of the ship because, according to, the commanding officers, they stole a ship, so they have to, suffer 2 years of criminal punishment for doing so. So this is all back in the, first episode of this season, by the way. So they put them in a hollow simulation to see how they would react, and learn that they are actually guilty of the crime they were accusing them of, and do not need to serve 2 years. However, the way they escaped this situation is giving out personal information to the crew, which they had access to because the crew was dead at the time, and the punishment for doing that is 2 years.
So, which is entrapment. It's like...
Yeah.
And, like, the whole situation reeks of, why did you think this was a good idea? Because I absolutely hate story points where the characters are in trouble for something that A, sure, they have no knowledge of, B, why is this a thing like 3 million years in the future? It's like, you guys are all reconstructed from nanobots. Like, why do we have to listen to you
I
now?
think that season 8 would have gone from a better storytelling engine where all the rest of the crew are oblivious to the threats that are out there, and it's the main dwarfers that are the ones that are actually knowledgeable. So you have these competent people being outdone by idiots.
Yeah.
Let's not put too deep a point on that. By the even standards of normal expectation metrics, like you got Starfleet or the Babylon 5 crew, or even like the leaders of the rebellion, these are hyper-competent people where anyone who cannot succeed has been killed off or run out of this program, so you have the elite of the elite. This is the exact opposite of the bell curve, and that's one of the things that makes Red Dwarf's comedy work, as through Lister's character arc, you can see how the worst people, and that those that are unmotivated or untalented, can actually rise to the occasion to do all of these great things. Season 8 removes that paradigm entirely.
And the only time when we get close to what Davis was describing was Cassandra, where we get an actual threat of a computer that can predict the future with 100% accuracy, and that was actually a good episode. If the series had more like that, and less like Pete or Critey TV, or Back in the Red, Series 8 could have been really good.
Yeah.
It would have been imperfect because you robbed the whole joke of Dave being the last human alive, but it still would have been better than what we got.
Yeah. The thing about Cassandra was that it's a computer that's super smart and can tell the future, but Lister outthinks it because he figures out what Cassandra's actual plan was. Cassandra foresaw her own death, and it being caused by Lister. So most of what happens is her conspiring to take Lister down with her and making him, live all of his days in regret by making him kill his best friend, who, unsurprisingly, has become Rimmer, and trying to trick Rimmer into sleeping with Kaczewski because she knows all. She foresees all. This is going to happen. And, of course, what Lister's realization is, she knows the future, but that doesn't mean she can't lie about what actually happened. So, what happens at the end is, he says all this, that he doesn't believe in predestination, and he's going to just not kill her, but walk away. The joke, of course, being that, through a convoluted series of events, he just sticks a bit of gum he'd been chewing takes it out of his mouth, puts the gum on the wall, and then the gum ball drops and sets off a Rube Goldberg machine. Thank you.
Yep.
That actually does Cassandra in. That is, both keeping consistent to Red Dwarf's own logic about time travel, in that if you know the future, you don't have if you have precognitive abilities or change things to affect the future, you stick yourselves in a causality loop by that knowledge, and that knowledge influences your actions to cause the actions you have foreseen.
Speaking of causality loops, my favorite episode,
before we get
we'll get back to that. Yeah,
Pete, however, doesn't work because it could have worked because initially it's the dynamic of Rimmer versus Lister turned on its head by them both being in solidarity against the actions of the captain, and him being, a self-serving dick. But the reason it doesn't work is that it's just the same joke over and over again. The antics Rimmer and Lister get into basically just keep getting them sent back to the captain's office like a pair of unruly teenagers. And it's grating because, one, Rimmer's own personal goals put him at odds with talking back to, authority as he does, as that way he'll never actually become an officer, which even after getting a prison sentence on his record, he still wants. So it doesn't make sense for him to be talking back like that. And two, it's like, there's only so many zany things you can do with them to, like, get them to be sent back here. And the fact that this is one big zany adventure where they actually take a bird that has been an approved pet, aka the reason Lister even started this situation in the first place, and actually cause it to be devolved into a Tyrannosaurus, who then poops on the captain of the ship.
And somehow has enough strength to tear through metal on a spaceship 3 million years in the future. And they just try to distract the T-Rex by making a giant pool of Vindaloo curry, and then the T-Rex eats that curry, and it causes more trouble, and it's like a compounding of stupid errors that it leaves you scratching your head and going, no, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
It just becomes bodily humor, and it's not funny. It's just like, the captain tries to build it up, tries his best to build up all the craziness that's happening, and it's like, this isn't funny anymore.
And
it wasn't funny in the beginning.
Oh, there's another joke from this one, joke in this one, where one of their punishments is to peel an entire ship's worth of potatoes. The entire ship's worth for lunch. That's 2 weeks of potato peeling. That is their punishment. And it's like, that's excessive and ridiculous with the amount they give them. And then they get the idea, oh, we'll make this easier by creating a virus that is programmed to eat potato skins and nothing else. And the virus gets misprogrammed, eats all of their clothes, it eats all of their hair. By the virtue of that, it should then start eating pretty much everyone, but all it does is make the captain, after touching one of them, also lose his hair and clothing. That is the length of the joke there.
Right, which, it's just dumb. Like, it's, like, the show has done much better, so to see season 8 take such a giant nosedive is kind of, sad to watch, I've seen plenty of worse television, but there's nothing worse than watching a show, have, that one really bad season where nothing works. And even when things do work, there's, a problematic element to it,
Yeah. Throughout this whole thing, we watched this late at night, at times, and while I did fall asleep, that was mostly just because I was tired after a long day. I was falling asleep at this because I was bored by it. Season 8 is boring. It is dull, listless, it's not funny. The opening of Back in the Red Part 1 is just this one long thing of Lister trying to get Rimmer to react to him, and I'm just like, get on with it, we get it, tell the joke, and move on.
It's like, out of 8 episodes, only one of them is actually good to watchable in it. And, yeah, that was the low point of the show. Seasons 9, 10, and 11, and 12. Yeah, there are 12 current seasons. They're still going 30 years later in this. It's like, you can average it to one season every 2 years, 2 to 3 years at the rate they've gone through it. But yeah, that is the worst they ever got, and the rest of the show is really damn enjoyable and solid. And one of the funnier, jokes in that they make fun of, the problems of time travel, in that Dave Lister is his own father.
Yeah, it's time to talk about
It's time to talk about that.
Yep.
Basically, he was abandoned as a kid under a pool table in a box titled R. Rob or Ross, spelled Ouroboros. The people who found him just named him Dave because clearly the people who wrote that are stupid people. But 3 million years into the future, he encounters the future Kochanski, or the alternate dimension version of Kochanski, with a fertilization tube which has an egg in it. He is actually that fertilized egg. During the events of that adventure, he comes across, when they're talking about his origins in the box, they find a pack of Ouroboros brand batteries, which is a clue to himself that he is the beginning and end of humanity. As long as he continues to be born and live his life, humanity will never truly end. And it's a
damn powerful episode, all things.
Yeah, and it's playing off of pretty much all we know of Lister's backstory, in that he grew up poor and learned to love simple things, simple values.
And, like, it's a really good use of the causality loop trope, and, you know, it's a damn good piece of science fiction, and I think anybody could just... It's better when you watch it with the rest of the context of Red Dwarf, but if you're into causality loops in that kind of fiction, it's definitely worth a viewing.
But the reason, I think one of the best episodes, okay, not the absolute best episode, but one of the best follow-ups they could have done with it is in season 10, which aired in 2012, they had a follow-up to that in the episode Fathers and Sons, where basically, he blames all his layaboutness on his dad, aka himself, because that's how he was, and basically then has to man up and be a father to his son, aka himself, and make his son make hard choices and actually work to actively improve himself.
But how they do this is the most hilarious thing they could have done. Basically, during his birthday party, Dave Lister blacks out drunk, and when he awakens, he discovers a series of videotapes that he himself recorded while drunk.
So he wouldn't remember them.
Right. And himself on the videotape is the fatherly figure and knows exactly how Dave is going to react. And, like, it is just a comedy of, like, you're arguing with yourself. Only one side is the father, the other one's the son. It's like, you don't know me.
Go sign up for this class, get your tooth fixed, because his tooth was broken in it, and then come back and play the next recording.
And then he keeps playing the recording just because he's not going to do all that. And then he's like, you fix and near the end, he says, like, so, you fix the filling.
Wrong.
And then he's like, go, see that guitar over there in the corner? Go on, play us a song. And then he picks it up, it's a cardboard cutout. It's like, you see that dot in the distance there? That's your guitar. I flushed out the airlock. He's like,
punishment enacted. Granted,
Right.
The reason he can foresee all these things is that in the episode they had installed a new AI, with predictive algorithms that basically could tell what people were going to do from their
Previous actions and
personality.
Yeah. It's a really damn funny episode, because again, it's just arguing with yourself, and, like, I kind of like it when one character's like, oh, I know everything I'm gonna do, and the other guy's like, no, listen up, you little shit.
And I think what I liked best about this is truly the character work in this. When it was really done well, it was done fantastically well. Like we said about Rimmer, he's a smeghead, but you can truly understand him, and that comes, like, I say the peak of his character development, like the best it could be, and in my personal favorite episode is the last episode of Series 10, The Beginning, where we get, in the beginning, a flashback to when Rimmer was in college or something, and his dad was
the professor,
and his dad
basically turns him into a guinea pig.
He humiliates him among everyone.
By, like, saying, like, let's see if he will react the same way everyone else will, just so he can be part of the group. And when a girl he's sitting next to tries to let him in on it, his own nature just, like, thinks
Kicks
that he's
in,
insulting
right? Because,
him.
like, his father wouldn't do that, and it's totally believable because, you know, Rimmer desperately wants the approval of his father.
And how he conforms to all the rules and expectations of society, no matter how ludicrous or backwards they may seem. And that's where you really see the impetus for that, into that he's trying to do well by his father so much that he doesn't see how much he was actually humiliating him until time's passed and he looks back.
Yeah. And then at the end, we get the big bomb of all bombs, which is...
In that the reason his father hates him is that his father is not his father. His father was actually the...
Gardener Dungo.
gardener who his mom had an affair with.
And so Rimmer at the end, like, by the end, they're in a big life or death situation, simulates are after them, and Rimmer, after learning this truth, is crushed. But then he has a moment that is fantastic. It's a fantastic character moment where he realizes if his real father could see him, he would be proud. Like, second technician on a JMC starship, senior officer, and I don't smell a manure. And realizes now he has a new voice that is telling him he is great. And he actually succeeds with a real strategy that outwits their opponents and wins. And he happily, in a callback to the very first episode, which was called The End, he says, "The slime is coming home," but in a very proud manner where you can see, like, if this was the last episode, that would be it.
Possibly the beginning.
It probably was intended to be, but then they got renewed for 2
Right.
more seasons.
It's possibly also the beginnings of the most amazing man in the galaxy, Ace Rimmer.
What a guy. Ace Rimmer is Rimmer's counterpart from another universe where basically Rimmer skated by and never achieved anything because he kept getting breaks that forced him to not look at himself. It's basically the same thing Lister kind of had, but with someone who was actually trying but didn't have the intelligence to do this. Ace is actually would have happened had Rimmer not gotten the breaks and been held back, forced him to look at himself and actually prove himself long before all of this. So basically, Ace then became the overachiever his normal self never was and never could be.
And this guy is awesome. How awesome? Try skydiving while surfing on an alligator.
After blowing up a plane full of Nazis.
And then the alligator attacks one of the Nazis as he's, as he's coming down. And it is like
Well, he lands on his feet, saves the girl that was tied up and ready for execution, and escapes on a motorcycle with style, and implying heavily that the two are then going to have fantastic sex.
It is like I saw this and I was constantly going, is this happening? Is this a kind of scenario that is possible with, say that sentence, like that scenario out loud in a public place and people think you have gone bonkers, you know?
And the best part about it is when we see him in his home universe, in his first appearance, we see everyone everyone in different alternate selves, and it turns out even guys want him, cause he's that damn charming,
Women
lovable.
want him. Men want to be him. And possibly be with him.
Yes.
Because he's such a guy.
He's such a guy, and then Rimmer, actually in his last episode of Series 7, would have got a pretty good send-off, where he becomes the new Ace Rimmer, because there must always be an Ace Rimmer to go dimension hopping and save the day.
So while the original Rimmer might be the most inept of all of them, he is still Ace Rimmer. He still has the potential to be that hero. He just needs to believe in himself and that he can do it.
And then we discover that, around a planet, there is, an entire ring made out of the holopods of fallen Ace Rimmers from many different universes.
Who were all also holograms. There's actually a kind of interesting coda for that, in that Season 12 has them encounter a dimension hopping device, and Rimmer uses it to try, in essentially the grass is always greener kind of scenario, as he pops into the bodies and realities of his other selves. So he basically, I need to stop saying that phrase. He subsumes them, and every time he jumps to another reality, it's either as bad or as worse, in that in one universe he pops into, the drive plate explosion didn't happen, so everybody's old, but then the drive plate goes off because, oh no, his incompetence only is now catching up to him. And basically, there I go again. It concludes with him finding an awesome universe where Rimmer is an officer, married to the woman of his dreams, is very accredited in his profession, and yet he is the subordinate of Lister, who is even better off in all of those pursuits, and that he also finally got married to Kachansky, is the captain of the Red Dwarf, and is very financially wealthy because he basically, there I go again, blackmailed the Jupiter Mining Corps for a crap ton of money. And his response is like, I cannot live in any universe, that no matter how well I am off, you are doing better than me.
And then, like, when he gets back to the main universe, it's like, oh, River, did you find a much better universe? He takes the device and just smashes it on the ground, and it's like...
I threw it on the ground. I'm an adult.
Man! Oh, one of my favorite recurring jokes. The boys from the Dwarf.
Boys from the Dwarf.
That's a season 11, season 12 thing.
Yeah.
My favorite episode, however, is Mr. Flibble.
Yeah.
Mr. Flibble is very cross with you.
What do we do to naughty boys, Mr. Flibble?
Uncle Arnie fries him alive with his hex vision.
Basically,
That's
the
what
plot of the episode is that a virus is going around that turns, they go to
turns hologrammatic life forms, aka any AI that's second in a hologrammatic form, like Rimmer, it makes them go crazy.
And it all culminates in this scene where, like, Crichton, Lister, and Kat are all in a room, and they're
stuck in quarantine.
Yeah.
Because Rimmer thinks, oh no, they brought something back, even though Rimmer himself has already been infected simply because he was broadcasting. And he's got him locked in there because he is only now learning about the Space Corps Directive.
One of the best recurring gags in all of science fiction.
Because Rimmer does not understand the Space Corps Directive, or at least he cannot remember a single rule out of it.
Like, he keeps getting the rule, he keeps getting off by one number, and every time he's corrected, it's always something very, very off.
Yeah, because the one he would cite would usually be something hilarious that had absolutely nothing to do with the situation they were in.
And, so he decides to play by the book, torture them by putting them in quarantine.
And giving them nothing to do, so instead of all of them being united against him, they turn on each other.
Yep. And, like, we see, like, an image of Rimmer in a dress with, pigtails and a sock puppet.
Pippi Longstocking.
With army boots.
And a Jerry Kato from Digimon Tamers, like, stuffed animal glove.
Mr. Flibble. And it's, the most hilarious thing about it is
it's absolutely horrifying, despite how ridiculous it looks, because he is legitimately there and can possibly kill them.
And
Yep.
he actually tries to do that when he presents them with a very hilarious scenario that they try to play along with, saying, like, can we go see the King of the Potato People? And he's like, so let me get this straight. You want to fly on a magic carpet to visit the King of the Potato People and beg for your freedom, and you want me to believe that you're sane? I think that calls for 2 hours of W-O-O.
What's WOO?
You had to ask. Without oxygen. No oxygen for 2 hours. That'll teach you me bread baskets.
Speaking of bread baskets,
So,
Talkie Toaster.
would you like some toast?
No,
We don't want a toast.
I don't want any toast. He doesn't want any toast. None of us want any toast. We don't want any toast.
So, how about a muffin?
No muffins, or biscuits, or baguettes, or bagels.
Baps, crullers, and especially
No smeg-headed flapjacks.
Ah, so you're a waffle man, I see.
So
You see what I have to live with?
the context for that is there's this toaster called Talkie Toaster. It talks, and it's a toaster that's obsessed with bread products and making them for you, and it will always answer with howdly doodly do. And so
The thing about the toaster is it's clearly malfunctioning and is so obsessed with toast because it's been 3 million years and no one's toasted anything. But the thing about that is hilarious and yet sad at the same time is he would probably not be banished to the bottom storage decks of Red Dwarf. He just dialed it back a bit.
Yep.
And, tried to engage people in conversation so they would want Toast simply to talk to him. And it's kind of a microcosm of how everybody in the show acts, in that they go too far.
Yeah.
Every time.
And the episode where Talkie Toaster returns is when Rimmer and Crichton are in a political race for control of the ship because all the vending machines overheard Rimmer insult them, and now
They're on strike.
They're on
Yeah.
strike.
And they need that stuff to live.
Right, and so Lister and Crichton realize that there's only one object left on the ship that could give them the swing vote, and they go down to bargain with Talkie Toaster in the most hilarious sequence.
In that they make Lister eat toast.
Yep.
They, of course, renege on the deal later, but it's like, the bargaining in itself is hilarious because Talkie Toaster keeps upping the bargain while, Lister is trying to
downplay
argue for less.
Right.
And by the end of it, when Rimmer loses the election...
Cat locks him into where Talkie Toaster is, and...
Would you like some toast? No! Would you like some toast? No! Would you like some toast?
No! And like, Rimmer's, like, his actor's expression is just priceless because he's
pure, unbridled rage, and if he could, he would destroy that thing.
Chris Berry is a very good impressionist, so he does voices fantastically. There's an episode in season 2 where he basically has to mimic the rest of the cast, and he nails it. In fact, there's an unfinished episode where he provides all the voices, and if you didn't know it was him, you could not tell. He is that good at it.
In fact, Grant, he actually did the reading for an audiobook for the book version of Red Dwarf, which covers the first 6 or so seasons, I believe. And he is I have that myself, and he's perfect in it. It's like, even if you watch the show, then listen to that just for some added backstory and stuff, because he's perfect. It's worth it just to listen to Chris Berry doing very good impressions.
Yeah.
Now, you hear us talk about all these other characters much, but Cat is the one we don't talk about much because Cat basically doesn't have much to do. He's the one that facilitates exposition. He's kind of dumb. The setup joke is, hey, I've got a thought. Why don't we drop the defensive shields?
Well, it's a good idea, sir, with 2 big problems. 1, we don't have any defensive shields, and 2, we don't have any defensive shields. Now, I know that seems like repeating the point, but I felt it was such a big point that it deserved repeating, sir.
Good point, buddy.
Yeah.
And that basically that's the thing with him. He's there to be the cool guy and to set up the kind of dumb guy jokes, which kind of work with him. It's like, here's another one. From season 8, another one of the good bits is they give him an x-ray and he has 6 nipples. 6 nipples? I wonder what the women look like. Pretty easy to please in bed.
And I kind of has to be my least favorite character on the show because out of everybody, he seems to be the one that facilitates the most problems of the week, and usually like really dumb fashions. But I'm glad that in, series 12, where he actually has an episode where he fights off some polymorphs.
Season 11.
Season 11.
Can of Worms is the episode. It's the finale of the season, and that episode was actually adapted from a season 7 episode that never got made, when that annoyed some people when it was first aired because it's the sole episode the Cat ever had, and it's like him trying to find a mate, someone to make his life bigger, and then you get the actual episode and it's all an Alien parody.
And it's okay, but it's just okay, but it's good to at least see some kind of development.
Yeah.
But there's one point where it just goes straight into bodily humor, and it's just kind of like, ugh.
It's like, wait,
Evidently, Cat is the one who saves the day here, and that he's the one who destroys all the polymorphs, and the response is, but sir, how did you know those were the polymorphs? And he replies,
a mother knows.
A mother always knows her kids. The sad thing about all this is that Cat's actor, Danny John Jules, is really damn good as an actor.
Yeah, he's talented as hell.
If you've never seen the guy, he is one of the, he's not exactly the main character, but he was one of the head officials of the vampire faction in Blade 2. And I'm like, when I first saw Red Dwarf, I'm like, hey, that's that guy from Blade 2.
I didn't even know he was in Blade 2, mostly because, well, Blade 2, it kind of is not really memorable for me anymore, but it is cool at least that he got more work, and he's also a very, very talented dancer. Like, one of the best openings in my opinion, is from season 2, where they have a brief, dance number, where which is basically an excuse for Danny John Jules to flaunt his stuff as a singer and dancer. And it's called Tongue Tied, and I'd recommend looking the song up just because it's pretty catchy. And
Yeah. Otherwise, Daniel John Jules is most known for the British crime drama series Death in Paradise, which has been going on for a pretty long time. He's like the local police chief or commissioner in that series. I forget which, as I actually haven't seen much of it. But it shows a different contrast and range than what Cat allowed him to be.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, so speaking of the modern stuff, I thought the Back to Earth 3-parter, that was the season 9, it wasn't bad. As a fan of, humor that involves like the characters visiting like the real world, so to speak.
It's one of the better done episodes of that story engine.
Right, because basically the crew of the Red Dwarf, think they hop to a new reality where they are the TV show and they are just going around interacting with everybody. And there's even a funny joke where they go to Coronation Street and meet Dave Lister's actor. And
because Dave Lister's actor was for years one of the main characters of Coronation Street,
a British TV drama or
soap opera.
Soap opera, okay.
And also, it calls back to Craig Charles's drug problems, and he keeps thinking, "No, you're not here. You're not real. You're not here. You're not real. I'm not seeing this." And he thinks he's just having like a bad flashback.
And granted, the entire thing is one gigantic Blade Runner /
like it's a
not just Blade Runner. What's the other movie where reality is not what you think it is?
The Matrix.
Yeah, it's kind of a mashup of Blade Runner and The Matrix, where they're actually all in a delusion created by a creature called the Despair Squid. Season 9 is basically a sequel to the last episode of Season 6, where...
Actually, Season 5. Back to Reality. It was Season 5.
Oh yeah, Back to Reality was Season 5.
Season 6 was the one where they meet their evil future selves.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that episode is where they encounter this Despair Squid thing, where it basically feasts on the despair of others and causes them to kill themselves, so by trapping them in illusions.
But, in Back to Earth, they meet the female variant who feeds off of joyous stuff, so.
And it also,
if it wasn't for that point, I think it would be perfect, but overall, it's, I thought it was a great way to get, the crew reintroduced to a new age.
And it also gave Lister really good character development that I think transferred over to the new series, where he finds out that he has fans in the real world. He has people that root for him and think that even though he's a bum, he's pretty cool. And he even starts to think that of himself.
Yeah, even though he's lazy, he's also brave. He doesn't take smeg from anybody.
Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, the recent series that have come out are pretty damn good. I think Series 12 has been like the best season in quite some time, in my opinion.
Not to say that seasons 10 and 11 weren't good, but they were clearly coming back on board.
Yeah.
All that.
Still working out the kinks, and in between Series 10 and 11, there was a 4-year gap, so there was time for things to get a little rusty.
And Series 12 is the one with the finale being Skipper, the one where Rimmer's going to the different dimensions, and it felt like a mixture of the new stuff, but also what made the old stuff hilarious.
Yeah, we even get the return of Norman Lovett, who played Holly, for 2 seasons. Then he was replaced with an actress
named Hetty Hayridge,
who was pretty good. Her problem was that she really didn't have much to do outside of some zany stuff.
At least once Krite was introduced.
Yeah, and it was just really fun to see Norman Lovett back for even just a cameo. It was just fun.
And I also, honestly, all the crew members, as you watch through the show, you grow attached to them in some shape or form. You love them, you hate them, you want to call them, you want to yell at the screen to say you're being such a smeg-head. But it's still a, fun journey,
Yeah, and the fact they can say this funny after full 30 years, and we've heard word that there's going to be a season 13 that'll be released eventually. It's keep coming back to the Dwarf.
Yeah, I mean, it's an endearing show that it's, the fact that it's gained a fan base over all these years, that new seasons keep being commissioned, and it's nothing short of, like, it's kind of inspirational when you think about it. Since the original seasons, their sets look very low budget, but as time went on, they got bigger and bigger budgets to, like, expand the ship, make things look a lot better. Set designs got better. And
if they were set year by year, they could actually reduce their production costs, because it feels like they keep having to rebuild the set, and thus the show has a bunch of continuity errors between all the different set designs. But that doesn't feel like such a big deal versus, say, a hard sci-fi series doing it, because Red Dwarf is in and of itself a comedy. It's the MST3K, this is all just so you should really just relax, because the background setting details don't matter as importantly as the storytelling, whereas in a show that wants you to take it seriously, those kinds of things matter more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what does the future hold for Red Dwarf when season 13 never comes out? We can only hope that it's, like, just as funny as everything else, but, I think my favorite aspect of the show has been just the character interaction between two people that are fundamentally flawed individuals. Basically, they're like, Lister is the lazy bum but has a heart of gold, where Rimmer is, like, the guy that should be on top of his game, but due to his own smeg-headedness, he is not, like, these two extremes just, like, bouncing off of each other, and, with Cat and Crichton, like, in the middle, just, like, watching the shenanigans go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll happily wait for season 13, no matter how long it takes.
Yep.
Even if it takes 3 million years.
Yep.
Also, make sure to return your library books.
Otherwise, the fines will probably be enough to fund a first world country.
I really wish they had actually did they ever bring that up as an actual plot point?
They should.
That really should. Oh my god.
They did. Lister, because he's the only lasting human alive, has the greatest accumulation of wealth because of compound interest. The only reason he's not the only thing that has money in the future is because of the Norwip Federation. Why the Norwip Federation? You'll have to light on the bathroom. Yeah, so they bring up the library book thing in a weird way, but not in the way it should have.
Yeah.
So, I think that's pretty much all for this time.
Pretty much. We covered the bases.
But,
we're probably not going to do these with an entire series in one big setting. We just, they're 6 to 8 episodes a season, so there wasn't exactly much to do a season-by-season emphasis on, but we'll try and do that for other stuff we watch in the off time. Next on our list is Doctor Who.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be a long one.
We'll see you in 50 years when we finally get around to series.
We're probably going to break those up by serials or seasons, or rephrase, we're probably going to break it up by different doctors, and then break off to watch something else in between that, because it's frickin' Doctor Who.
Yeah, pretty much. It's huge.
But before we sign off, my favorite character has to be a tie between Lister and Crichton, because Crichton's like a whale-meaning robot that, due to his own kind of pacifistic nature, unfortunately has, bad things occur. And Lister is, you can't really hate the guy, even though he's a lazy bum. Although he has a weird love for, chicken vindaloo.
Indian food in general.
Yeah. My favorite is a tie between Crichton and Rimmer. Mostly because Crichton is just I like just his straight, basically the way he and Rimmer play off each other, with the Space Corps directive stuff, they made for a good duo.
That's really funny.
Plus, Rimmer's, character development in the seasons, when you really got in his head in a good way, he was always the funniest of them all. And it always felt the most meaningful to me. And Crichton was just funny on his own.
Yeah. I can't really name a favorite character. The show really is most successful because of its ensemble atmosphere, so on that kind of thing, it feels wrong for me to go out and explicitly name a favorite character when the show doesn't really work for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But if you have time and you want a good laugh in 3 million years in the future, then definitely check out Red Dwarf. You won't be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
After
We're gonna love it.
After 3 million years, he's free. It's time to conquer Earth.
They've had it good for too long!
We'll see you all later.
See you around.
See you
people.
guys.